They entered through the same curtain every celebrity did, but when these five stepped under the NBC lights, something shifted in the air. The laughter turned warmer, the silences stretched longer, and Johnny Carson, the man who never cracked, let the mask slip. For 30 years, he ruled the Midnight Kingdom, hosting over 22,000 interviews. He turned monologues into an art form, timing into religion, and small talk into something close to jazz. But behind that immaculate rhythm was a man drawn to mystery, the kind of mystery that hides behind a practiced smile. Most guests performed for the cameras, only a rare few performed for him. They disarmed him, challenged him, made him think or made him feel, and in doing so revealed who Johnny Carson really was when the cue cards ran out. What follows are not just appearances. They are collisions between personality and truth. 5 nights when television forgot to act, because these weren't simply Johnny's favorite guests. They were the 5 mirrors that reflected the man behind America's laughter, Jimmy Stewart, the man who made Johnny cry. It happened without warning. A folded piece of paper, a trembling hand, a poem about a dog named Bo. Jimmy Stewart's voice was steady at first, then cracked like old film stock. The audience fell still, unsure whether to breathe. And Johnny, whose armor was humor itself, sat frozen. No grin, no deflection, just tears forming beneath studio heat. It was a moment of pure human static, broadcast to millions. America's master of cool undone by an old friend's grief. Stewart had always represented the America Carson longed for, honest, grounded, emotionally fluent. He was authenticity wrapped in humility, the anti-Hollywood Hollywood star. And Johnny, the son of Nebraska, saw in him a gentleness he'd spent decades hiding behind one-liners. After that night, Carson changed. He requested Stewart's appearances personally, asked for extra time, even delayed commercials, a sacrilege in network television. Crew members said he smiled wider whenever Jimmy's name was on the schedule. Between them existed a quiet brotherhood, 2 men raised on decency, trained in restraint, learning in real time how to cry on camera. When Carson retired, he phoned only a handful of people. Jimmy was one of them. No public statement, no spectacle, just gratitude shared between 2 men who'd learned the same truth, that vulnerability, once revealed, never leaves the room. Stewart didn't just make Johnny Carson cry. He reminded him what laughter had been protecting all along. Bob Newhart, the quiet genius. If Jimmy Stewart touched Carson's heart, Bob Newhart calibrated his mind. Where others chased punchlines, Bob played silence like a Stradivarius. He'd pause longer than anyone dared, then drop a whisper so dry it sparked an eruption. Johnny adored it because it was discipline disguised as ease. Their conversations weren't interviews. They were musical duets. Newhart would begin a story. Carson would add a note, and suddenly they were riffing in perfect sync. It was comedy jazz, every pause intentional, every smirk a chord change. Newhart never came to perform, he came to talk. And Johnny, who lived on instinct, found rare comfort in someone who measured words as precisely as he did. Producers recall Johnny waving off countdowns, mouthing, "Keep it going," to the control room. He would never interrupt Bob, never rush a rhythm that worked like clockwork without a script. That was Carson's highest praise. Freedom. Off-air, their friendship deepened quietly. Golf games, private dinners, inside jokes only mathematicians of humor would understand. Johnny once said, "Bob makes it look effortless." And that's what kills me, because Carson knew the secret. They both spent lifetimes perfecting what looked like spontaneity. Newhart's humility sealed the bond. He thanked the camera crew after every show, remembered their names years apart. Johnny noticed. He always noticed. He hated divas and loved craftsmen. And in Bob, he found the rarest kind of genius, the one who doesn't need to announce it. When they laughed together, you could feel decades of professionalism dissolving into friendship. The jokes weren't just funny. They were proof that mastery can still sound like play. Burt Reynolds, the playful rival. Then came the storm. When Burt Reynolds hit the stage, the air crackled with danger and cologne. He didn't sit, he arrived. Hollywood's swagger incarnate, armed with charm and a hidden squirt gun. What followed were not interviews, but skirmishes, shaving cream sneak attacks, pranks escalating like Cold War tactics. Johnny wasn't steering the show anymore. He was surviving it, and he loved every second. Reynolds broke the host-guest contract. He came to have fun, not to promote. To Johnny, that was revolutionary. Burt understood the game. Late night wasn't theater. It was combat with laughter as the prize. When Carson teased him about divorces or box office flops, Reynolds didn't flinch. He doubled down. That earned him respect faster than applause. In an industry allergic to self-deprecation, he wore it like cologne. Off stage, the two shared a quiet understanding. Both ruled their worlds. Both were lonely at the top, and both used laughter as armor. Their pranks were therapy disguised as entertainment. Johnny once said to a producer, "Burt gets it. He doesn't need the crown, he just likes the sword fight." Their rivalry became friendship, and that friendship became legend. Decades later, Carson would tell nervous guests, "Just relax, have fun like Burt does." And that was the highest compliment he could offer. Because in Reynolds, Carson found the only kind of unpredictability he trusted, the kind that came from joy. Orson Welles, the magician and the philosopher. Some guests brought chaos. Orson Welles brought gravity. When he walked onto the set, the audience leaned forward as if history itself had entered the room. Carson did too. Here was a man who had built and broken Hollywood with his bare intellect. Welles was towering, mercurial, mesmerizing, a storm of charm, genius, and melancholy. And for once, Johnny Carson, the man who always knew the next line, found himself speechless. Before every Welles appearance, Johnny prepared. He read up on history, art, theater, even magic, subjects Welles could pivot to without warning. He wanted to meet him at level, because to Carson, Welles wasn't a guest, he was a test. Their exchanges drifted far from the Tonight Show blueprint. They debated the nature of fame, the loneliness of creation, the price of perfection. Welles didn't sell anything, he revealed, and Johnny let him. During one segment, Welles performed a card illusion live. Carson's reaction wasn't staged. It was awe, raw and childlike. When the cameras cut to commercial, Johnny turned and whispered, "That was real magic, not TV magic." It was the purest sentence he ever spoke on air. What bound them wasn't fame, but candor. Welles talked about failure like it was a friend, about bankrupt films, missed chances, vanished glory. Carson listened, transfixed. Because if Welles could face his ghosts with such eloquence, maybe Johnny could too. Their conversations were less interviews than confessions. Two craftsmen dissecting illusion while living inside it. Carson later said, "For a few minutes, I got to be myself, not the host." It was the greatest compliment he could give. Jack Benny, the master of timing. If Orson Welles revealed the intellect behind the performance, Jack Benny revealed the architecture beneath the laughter. Before there was Carson, there was Benny, and Johnny never forgot it. He had studied Benny the way a pianist studies Bach. Every pause, every blink, every note of silence that could be funnier than a punchline. From him, Carson learned the invisible rhythm of comedy, that patience could detonate louder than wit. When Benny visited The Tonight Show, the hierarchy inverted. Johnny became the pupil. He laughed more openly, interrupted less, and adjusted camera angles so Benny's reactions, not his own, were center frame. No one else got that treatment. To watch them together was to watch time collapse, the radio era shaking hands with television's golden age. Benny's deliberate pace against Johnny's quicksilver energy created harmony out of contrast. After one taping, Johnny told the producer, "He's why I do what I do," and it was true. Benny's fingerprints were on every Carson pause, every slow grin before a punchline landed. It wasn't imitation, it was inheritance. In Johnny's office hung one framed photo, Jack Benny. Not a trophy, not a self-portrait, just gratitude frozen in black and white. Because in Benny, Carson saw the thing every performer secretly fears losing, control over silence. When Benny died, Johnny didn't make a statement. He made a silence. A full 30 seconds on air. No jokes, no monologue. Just the kind of stillness Benny would have adored. It said more than any tribute could. 5 guests, 5 revelations. Each one peeled back another layer of the man America thought it knew. Jimmy Stewart gave him heart. Bob Newhart gave him balance. Burt Reynolds gave him chaos. Orson Welles gave him depth. Jack Benny gave him time. Together, they composed the symphony of Johnny Carson's humanity. He learned that authenticity was rarer than fame, that silence could outshine applause, and that true connection only happens when you stop trying to be the cleverest man in the room. When The Tonight Show ended in 1992, Carson didn't chase cameras or farewell tours. He retreated to Malibu, tending his garden, writing letters to friends, and sailing alone at dusk. He had mastered the one art form left untelevised, disappearing gracefully. Decades later, his staff still recalls the nights when he let the act fall away. And every one of those nights involved one of these 5. Maybe that's the secret to longevity in entertainment or in life. Know when to listen, know when to pause, and most of all, know when to mean it. If you'd like to keep exploring the golden ghosts of television, just click the next story waiting on your screen.